A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. When Judas had left them, Jesus said, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and God will glorify him at once. My children, I will be with you only a little while longer. I give you a new commandment. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you also should love one another. This is how all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." The Gospel of the Lord. I suppose there is no hotter topic throughout history and culture and civilization than a little four-letter word called love. We see statues and artworks dedicated to it. Great literary works are dedicated to the whole theme of love. One of Shakespeare's greatest plays is dedicated to love, and some of his other plays as well. Love is at the heart of some of the most heroic acts in fiction and in history, and even down to today, some of the most heroic acts and some of the most heinous acts of violence are done in the name of love. In many ways, love is the great legitimizer. You attach love to anything, and suddenly everything becomes acceptable. We've seen crimes of passion that are done out of love. In the last couple of years, during the pandemic, we heard people say, getting vaccinated is an act of love. We hear popular socio-political cliches that attach love to many things. And in many ways, the attachment of love is meant to shame others who might be against something that I'm for, because after all, I'm doing it out of love, and if you're not for it, then you must be a hater. And we see oftentimes that black and white juxtaposition over issues by simply putting on the word love, a little four-letter word. And a lot of times people will remind us, Jesus told us to love. And sometimes it's often amazing. I mean, you look at just the book out of which we do the readings, it's this thick. And those are just excerpts of the Bible. The Bible, depending on your edition, can be quite thick, hundreds of pages, millions of words, and everyone reduces it down to love, the one word that Jesus says, which is in fact the basic commandment that he gives all of us. As he says, "This is how all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." And even down to today, we hear such cliches as freedom to love. Love is love. But what is meant by that is oftentimes at extreme odds to how Jesus expressed it in the gospel. And yet we invoke Jesus quite a bit. During his 8 years as Pope, Benedict XVI wrote what many would say is his greatest work, at least his greatest encyclical, entitled Deus Caritas Est. God is love. And while when we think of love nowadays, we tend to think of something very emotional, very passionate, Pope Benedict actually approaches it from a very intellectual standpoint in terms of understanding how we as Catholics approach the whole issue and theme of love. I'm not going to read the entire encyclical, but there is a portion toward the beginning in which he talks about the references of love in the Scriptures, in the Bible. And he writes, "The love between man and woman, which is neither planned nor willed, but somehow imposes itself on human beings, was called eros by the ancient Greeks. Let us note straight away that the Greek Old Testament uses the word eros only twice, while the New Testament does not use eros at all. Of the three Greek words for love, eros, philia, the love of friendship, and agape, New Testament writers prefer the last, which occurs rather infrequently in Greek usage. As for the term philia, the love of friendship, it is used with added depth of meaning in St. John's Gospel in order to express the relationship between Jesus and his disciples. He points out three words that the Bible uses. Old Testament obviously was written in Hebrew, but was translated by ancient scholars into Greek centuries before Jesus was born. But between the Greek Old Testament and the New Testament that was written in Greek, the most common word used for love in the ancient Greco-Roman word, eros, is used only twice in the Old Testament and never in the New. It's the least common word used in the Bible. The least commonly used word in Greco-Roman society for love, agape, is the most used word in the Bible. Eros, expressing that physical, hedonistic love of pleasure and attraction and passion. Agape being a love that expresses a total giving of oneself for another. Ergo, Jesus' declaration, there is no greater love than to lay down your life for your friends. An act that Jesus did for his disciples, his apostles did for their followers, for Jesus and for the church and for the faith. And the love we talk about as a people of faith is of a total self-giving of one to another, which is not exclusive of the word philia, which is friendship, the love that friends have. We might see examples of that, say, in The Lord of the Rings, the friendship between Frodo Baggins and Samwise Gamgee. They were good, close friends. They were not lovers. They were good, strong friends in the sense of philia. And it certainly is not exclusive of the love of eros, but agape is the love we are called as followers of Christ. And when we see how frequently and infrequently these different words are used in comparison to the popular society of the time these Gospels were written, and especially at the time when the Old Testament was translated, we see in the example of what we see in Scriptures that regardless of how society understands and defines love, with its popular cliches of freedom to love, love is love, do it for love, all you need is love, the understanding we as Catholics in particular, as Christians in general, have for love has always been and must always be countercultural. It must never be in conformity with the popular notions of love. And as we see throughout just cultural history, humanity has never gotten it right when it comes to the understanding of love as Jesus gives it to us. And so it's easy to be moved by popular cliches, popular slogans, catchphrases, and popular applications of love as a justification for pretty much anything. And of course it's easy to reduce the depth, the substance, and the meaning of the very words of Jesus himself when we rather cavalierly say, well, Jesus said we are to love. But how did Jesus love? What does he expect from us as a people he calls to love? Pope Benedict speaks very eloquently in his encyclical. And I encourage all of us to find it on the internet or get a copy and read it, because that is at the heart of what we are called to be as the followers of Christ. Not a people of hate, but a people of love. A love that is always at its heart countercultural and never in conformity with popular notions of love. Because in the end, we don't follow popular opinion, popular definitions. We are followers of Christ. And the love he calls us to is countercultural, not exclusive of the other forms of love used in the Bible, but must always be a self-giving of one for another. We see that in the love between a husband and a wife. We see that in the love between two really good friends. We see that in the love one has for one's country. We see that in the love one has for one's family. And we certainly see it in the love many, many saints have shown us for the church. But we especially see that in the great love that Jesus showed each and every one of us when he gave himself on the cross to save us from our sins out of love, a total self-giving for us. And it is in that spirit that Jesus says, "As I have loved you, so you also should love one another." As Jesus loved us in his total self-giving for us on the cross, we are called to love in a total self-giving to one another. This is how they will know that we are his disciples. Not because we're in conformity with popular cliches and slogans and definitions of love, the opposite of which simply leads to a label of hate. But this is how they will know that we are his disciples, because our love stands out. Our love is countercultural, and our love is in conformity with the basic command of Jesus in that little four-letter word, at least in English, that little four-letter word in which he tells us to love one another.